President Biden's first meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin ended with dueling press conferences after the two leaders huddled in Geneva alongside their top aides for several hours. Putin went first, announcing that both countries would return their ambassadors to posts in each other's cities and characterizing the sit-down as constructive.
As for the first general appraisal, I think there was no hostility, quite the contrary. Our meeting took place, principally speaking, many of our positions, we don't share the same positions in many areas, but I think that both of these sides showed a willingness to understand one another and to find ways to bring our positions closer together.
But the Russian leader blamed the U.S. for cyber attacks that U.S. officials say are actually coming from Russia, and he deflected on the issue of human rights, which Biden had pledged to bring up during the meeting. Putin compared Biden to his predecessor, former President Donald Trump, while praising Biden as a, quote, experienced leader.
And I think that this is a very experienced politician. We had a tete-a-tete for almost 2 hours, and that is not something you do in such a detailed way with many politicians. As far as the other point is concerned, you remember that his predecessor had a different view, and this one decided to act differently, and his reply was different from Trump's.
The Russian president also said he is open to the possibility of a prisoner exchange, coming after the parents of a former U.S. Marine who was jailed in Russia had pleaded with the Biden administration to secure their son's release. And he hinted at a, quote, specter of trust that he said had developed between him and his U.S. counterpart. Biden took questions from reporters in Switzerland once Putin had finished speaking, and he started his press conference by saying that while the meeting did involve looking for common ground, he also confronted Putin on human rights, election interference, and cybercrime.
The bottom line is I told President Putin that we need to have some basic rules of the road that we can all abide by. I also said there are areas where there's a mutual interest for us to cooperate. For our people, Russian and American people, but also for the benefit of the world and the security of the world.
Biden was asked about what would happen to Russia if opposition leader Alexei Navalny dies in Russian prison, drawing what could be a red line in the future.
What did you say would happen if opposition leader Alexei Navalny dies?
I made it clear to him that I believe the consequences of that would be devastating for Russia. I'll go back.
Biden also said he informed Putin that the U.S. would retaliate with its, quote, significant cyber capabilities if ransomware attacks from Russia on U.S. entities continued. Defending the shorter-than-expected length of the summit, Biden said the meeting was still a substantial amount of time for two world leaders to spend together.
The reason it didn't go longer is when the last time two heads of state have spent over 2 hours in direct conversation across the table, going into excruciating detail. You may know of time, I don't.
Biden said Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, and Ukraine came up during a conversation that did not involve aggression from either side.
There were no threats, just simple assertions made, and no, well, if you do that, then we'll do this, with anything I said. It was just letting him know where I stood, what I thought we could accomplish together, and what, in fact, if there were violations of American sovereignty, what we would do.
Biden said the goal of forging the relationship with Putin was not an exercise in trust, but in, quote, self-interest. The summit with Putin was the capstone of an ambitious swing through Europe for Biden, his first trip abroad as president. But he returns to Washington with his agenda completely stalled, facing the prospect of gridlock on Capitol Hill. Sarah Westwood for the Washington Examiner.